Hi, I'm Maria Hadley, Early Childhood Resource Specialist with StarNet Regions 1 and 3. As we know, effective communication doesn't just happen. It takes considerable effort to ensure a child's communication is successful. The use of visual supports has proven to significantly improve a child's independence, interaction with others, and participation in the early childhood years and well into adulthood. Even as adults, we use visual supports. What types of visual tools do you use throughout your day?
When I have important events, I write them down like a blue sheet notebook, and as I finish them, I cross them off and just go on to the next event.
Oh, I just get me a piece of paper out of my notebook here and write her down.
I normally write what I have to do during the day. That way I won't forget, because sometimes I'm an easy forgetter.
I'll use a calendar, a Franklin Covey planner, and a Palm Pilot. I put all of my finals and their times in my planner book.
I'm not really good at remembering appointments, and I have to work at it. So for me, it's somewhat of a problem.
Hi, my name is Linda Hodgden. I am a speech and language pathologist, and I've worked for many years with students with autism, Asperger's syndrome, and lots of students with behavior and communication challenges. They call me the Queen of Visuals because I wrote a book called Visual Strategies for Improving Communication. As you just heard, we all use visual strategies in our lives in some ways. What we're going to be talking about in this program is how to use visual supports for students with communication challenges to help them become more successful. The question is, what are visual supports? Well, visual supports are anything that you can see. Our environment is full of visual things, the signs in the grocery store and the signs that we see along the street and the traffic lights and the menus in the restaurants and things like that. So we're surrounded with visual information. Now, when we're talking about working with children and we're talking about using visual supports, there are several things to think of. Number one, there are those visual things that naturally occur in the environment, like the TV guide or the recipe in the cookbook or the newspaper or those signs out into the community. Then there are other visual things that are very important to students. Your body is a visual tool, and your facial expressions and your gestures and your body movements are very important communication for students. And then the third thing is that we can create visual tools, very specific visual tools to help students with specific areas of their lives. For example, a schedule to help them work through the sequence of activities in the day, or some kind of a task analysis to help them work through the steps to learn how to perform a certain task. So we can create specific visual tools to help them learn very specific skills. People always ask, why do we use visual supports? And there's a very important reason, because children understand them. When we're working with children with autism, and when we're working with a lot of children with other communication challenges and special learning needs, what we discover is that they have a strength in understanding visual information compared to their ability to understand auditory information. And yet they live in a world that's full of a lot of auditory communication. So if we can take some of the information that we give them and put it in a visual form, that can help them to handle life a lot better. Visual supports help children understand the routines in their lives. It helps them understand information. It helps give a sense of comfort and a frame to life for them. One of the most important things that we accomplish when we use visual strategies is we give students information in a form that they can understand easily. So we can use visual strategies to give them information about what's happening in their day, what kinds of choices they have, why something is happening, why something is not happening, things like that. And the bottom line is, when they understand, they can handle a lot of social situations better. They can handle the routines of life better. They can handle lots of things without having the behavior challenges and the frustrations and the resistance that parents and teachers may experience with their children. There are many different ways that we can use visual supports to help children in the classroom. One of the most common and most important visual tools is a schedule. I think every single classroom should have a schedule that gives students information about what will be happening during the day. Some children can use a very short schedule and other ones need a lot more detail. How long a schedule is will depend on the age and the skill level of the child and how much information they need. But in general, a schedule should tell them what those basic activities are during the day or what the transition times are during the day. For example, in the morning when we come to school, we have circle time. And when circle time is finished, then it's time to go to the bathroom. And then it's time for a snack. And then we're going to go to recess, that kind of thing. The schedule can be represented with a variety of different visual formats. For very young children, one of my favorite formats is to use photographs, or you can use line drawings or pictures from different programs that have picture collections. What's most important is that you're using some kind of visual representation that the children understand easily. When a teacher creates a schedule for a classroom, there's one more thing that she needs to do, and that is to use that schedule with the students. So it's really important at the beginning of the day to look at the schedule with the students and review what's going to be happening during the day. Now, there are lots of different ways to use schedules. Sometimes people will hang it on a wall, and during circle time, the children will look at what's going on. Some children need to go back to that schedule at every transition point during the day to say, okay, circle time is finished, now we're going to take the picture off of the wall and put it in a bucket, and let's look at what the next thing is. Some children look at that schedule, and then once they've looked at it, they have it kind of memorized in their brain, and they don't need to go back to it at every transition point. But one of the things that the teacher has to determine is how to use the schedule effectively with each individual student. How a schedule is presented in a classroom will depend on the age and the skill level of the students who are using it. For some students, it's very appropriate to hang the schedule on the wall so that everybody can see it. When I'm working with younger children or lower skilled students, I think it's really important to use nice, big, colorful photos or nice, big, very clear, realistic looking pictures of some kind. There are some students that might be too high for, and that there are some students who really might need to start with real objects. So you would show a student his lunchbox to let him know that it was time for lunch, or show him an object that you use for a specific activity so that he would know it was time for that activity. So as students begin to understand what those objects mean, then you can begin to transition to some very realistic photographs or very realistic pictures so that they can transition to things that are a little bit easier to use than the real objects. Sometimes people are very concerned about how the schedule is represented. They want the perfect way to display the information. Should it be on the wall? Should it be in a book? Should it be in a notebook? Should it be here? Should it be there? Sometimes it doesn't matter a whole lot. One of the greatest concerns that people will have is, should I make a vertical schedule or a horizontal schedule? And they have lots of reasons why they think it should be either vertical or horizontal. Sometimes those decisions are not that important. The most important part is that the visuals are there for the students to use. And if the student understands what the pictures represent and they can follow the schedule or follow the routine, if they can do what you're wanting them to do by using those visual strategies, that's what's most important. Now, if they spent all the time in the classroom, you would only need to have those visual tools in the classroom. But children move from one location to another in the classroom. They move out of the classroom to the gym or to recess and other places like that. So it's important that those visual tools be available to give them information, to help them handle transitions in the different locations that they are during their day. One of the challenges when creating a schedule is that if you put every single activity that you did throughout the whole day on that schedule, you'd have a really, really long schedule, and that wouldn't be very efficient. So one of the things that you can do is divide the day up into some general segments or some general activities. For example, you have a work time, and then you have a break time, and then you have a work time, and then you have a play time, that kind of thing. And then what you can do for the break time or the play time is you can create a mini schedule of what's going to be happening during that special slot. Or you might develop some kind of a choice board to give a student some choices of what he can do during that time. So, for example, if it was going to be a break time, then you say during break you can read a book, or you can play on the computer, or you can do this, or you can do this. And so the child has several choices during that time. Think of the daily schedule as a tool to give students a general idea about what's going to be happening throughout the whole day. Then what you can do is use what we call a mini schedule. And a mini schedule is just like the name, it's a mini. That means it's something that's giving them more information about a very specific time during the day. So, for example, the daily schedule might say that at 9 o'clock it's time for work time. Well, during work time we might have a mini schedule that says first you do this activity, then you do this activity, then you do this activity during that work time. So the mini schedule gives more specific information about a shorter time during the day. Most of us cannot live without our day planners or our calendars or our Palm Pilots and other tools like that to help us remember what's supposed to happen each day of the week and to remember all the schedules of life. And our children really benefit from having that kind of information too. It's very common in a classroom to use a calendar, but the way people use calendars in a classroom is basically they talk about today is Monday and it's May 7th and the year is 2007 and it's rainy or sunny or cloudy outside. And that's how people use calendars at school. But think about all of the other kinds of things that you and I put on our calendars. We put a doctor's appointment or a special meeting, or I have to remember to pay the paper boy, or whatever other things that we put on our calendars. And so think about how you can put those kinds of pieces of very important information on a calendar for children so that they can begin to think about and anticipate what's going to be happening in their lives. For example, if we're going to go on a field trip on Friday, put it on the calendar. Or if there's a soccer game on Saturday, put it on the calendar. Having that full of information about what's going to be happening in their lives will provide a lot of comfort to them. One thing that parents will talk to me a lot about is how to handle holidays, birthdays, Christmas, and things like that. And they will talk about how anxious their children get around any holiday or any special day in their lives. Well, think about how you can put that information on a calendar so that they can begin to anticipate what's going to be happening and when it's going to be happening. You and I use choice boards all the time. When we go to a restaurant, we look at the menu, and that tells us what the choices are. When you go to the gas station, you look at the gas pump, and that tells you what the choices are. Our children really benefit from knowing what the choices are, too. One of the complaints that I get from parents and teachers is that the child will do the same activity all the time. They will perseverate on one toy or one activity. And my suggestion is to make a choice board so that the child can see what the different choices are and choose one of the choices. Then when they've done that choice, we take that one off of the choice board, and then they have to make a different choice for something else. Giving students information about what choices are available or what choices are not available can be really, really helpful in managing their behavior. The way classrooms are set up, the teacher is in charge, and the teacher tells the children what to do. And when the teacher tells the children what to do, sometimes the children are not very happy. And then it's very easy to get into a power struggle. It's very easy to begin to feel like I have to win, because if I don't win, then the child will win. And that's an unfortunate kind of a dilemma to get into. So one of the things that's very helpful in a classroom is to develop ways to give children choices. You can structure it so that any of the choices are desirable from the teacher's point of view, but when children feel like they have an opportunity to make a choice, it gives them a sense of satisfaction and it gives them a sense of power and control over themselves, which can really make a difference in their participation and their cooperation in the classroom. So I think about what we're using, what kinds of pictures, what kinds of choices we're giving to students to use to make requests. And we have to be sure that we're giving them things to request that they really want. You know, sometimes what will happen is children will perseverate on one particular thing, one particular thing, one particular thing. Might not be that that's exactly what they want, but it might be that the choice that they want isn't there, so they're doing the best they can with what they have to work with. I always think about the fact that the visual representations that we're using, the pictures and the choices that we're giving children, we have to be like a detective. We have to be like Columbo, because we have to really watch and pay really close attention and really try to get into the thinking of that child so that we can make sure that we're giving them what they're really trying to communicate, or that we're giving them what they really need to understand, or we're giving them the real choices that they need. It's very easy for the teacher or the teacher's aide or the adult who's in charge to want to structure everything the way I want it to be. And it's really, really important to try and look at life through the eyes of the student so that we're teaching him what he needs to communicate, we're teaching him what he needs to understand, and we're really honing in on the individual needs of that student. Transitions are difficult for a lot of students. Think about it. Transitioning from something that I like to something that I don't like. Transitioning from something that I like and I don't want to stop. Transitioning to something and I don't know what's happening. So what do we do about transitions? I think one of the most important things is to give students information. Give them information about that transition. For example, prepare them for a transition. If they're doing something that they like, prepare them. In 5 minutes, there's going to be a change. Now, we can tell them in 5 minutes, but how long is 5 minutes? I don't know. But using a timer, for example, to show them in 5 minutes, and when the timer is done, then it's time to do something else, and to let them know, give them the information about what's going to be happening next. Now, transitioning to something I don't like, sometimes we have to do things with students that they don't like. And that's not going to be fun, except what I can do is I can tell them, first we're going to do this, something that you don't like, and then we're going to do this, something that you love. And so if I can structure so that thing that I don't like is going to be followed with something the student really likes, that can help with that sort of thing. Transitioning to something and I don't know what's happening. You know, so often we don't realize that we don't give children enough information about what they're doing, where they're going to go, what's going to be happening next. And it's really important to give them that information and to give it to them in a visual form so that they will really understand. When we talk about using visual strategies, people focus on the idea of using pictures, and yet all visual strategies don't have to be pictures, especially during transition times. Using an object that represents what's going to be happening can be a very appropriate visual cue. For example, if it's going to be lunchtime and we're transitioning to lunchtime, using the lunchbox or using a tool that's going to be used during the lunchtime can be a perfect cue to help the student change direction and move to the next activity. Transitions during games and activities, handing the student another toy or another piece of play equipment can help them recognize that it's time to change. Anything that is visual can help a student focus his attention on the fact that something is going to change. People will ask how to use the visual cues, and what I recommend is that you use simple language with the visual cue. So, for example, you develop a routine phrase to say when you're using a particular visual cue. If it's time for recess, you use the picture to show it's recess time, and then you say, it's time for recess. Using a consistent verbal script with a visual cue will really help the students focus their attention and follow through easily. By definition, one of the key areas that children on the autism spectrum need help is in the area of developing appropriate social skills. In school, it is so easy to focus on teaching academic skills that those social skills are often not addressed in the depth that they need to be. And what's really interesting to me is that sometimes children demonstrate what we call behavior problems, and in reality, those are social skills that they haven't learned yet. The behavior problems are really showing us that there are some social skills that those students need to learn. Visual strategies are a really, really important tool to teach social skills. And think about social life as very, very visual. And there are lots of tools that can be useful and helpful. Actually, there are a lot of storybooks that teach social skills that can be used with children to show them and to demonstrate and to talk about different social behaviors that they need to learn. And one of my very favorite tools now is discovering ways to use video to teach social skills. There is some research out now that shows that children can learn appropriate social skills by watching those appropriate behaviors on video. And once they watch those appropriate behaviors on video, they will begin to demonstrate those appropriate behaviors in their own lives. So I think that we've just kind of discovered the tip of the iceberg with that, and I think there's a lot to explore and a lot to learn about how to use video with children to teach the skills that we want them to learn. There are other ways to teach social skills. For example, using visual strategies to give them information to help them understand how to handle social situations. There's a technique called writing social stories that was developed by a woman named Carol Gray. And social stories are visual strategies. And the idea in using social stories is that you're writing some little stories to give students social information to help them understand how to handle social situations. One of the greatest challenges in dealing with social skills is identifying what skills need to be worked on, what skills need to be taught, and then to look at those skills and decide how can we use some visual tools, how can we use some visual information to help students learn the skills that they need to learn. When children with autism are included in a classroom, and particularly when they're included into a regular education classroom, one of the things that may happen is they may demonstrate some behavior problems. It's very common for that to happen. And when that happens, people go, oh my goodness, what should I do? This child doesn't belong here. And people get very, very nervous. When we're looking at the behavior problems, what we really need to do is watch that child and figure out why the behavior problems are occurring. When we really do some analysis of that, what we begin to find out is that communication is very often a real root or a real core reason why those behavior problems exist. Communication problems because these children may not be able to express themselves very well, but also communication problems because they don't understand really well. They don't understand why things are happening, why things are not happening, why something is changing, why you want me to do this, why you don't want me to do that kind of thing. Once we understand that communication is a real root, a real core part of the behavior problem, the solution will be improving communication. And visual strategies can be a really important part of that. Using visual tools to give students information is probably one of the most important ways to help to circumvent the behavior problems, because once students understand what's happening, what's not happening, why things are changing, that sort of thing. It can really help them to handle the situation much better with more appropriate behavior. What I recommend for classroom teachers is to start with a schedule, to think about how to create a schedule for the needs of their students in the classroom, step by step, those main activities throughout the day, so that students will have that structure in their classrooms. That would be the very first thing I would do to set up a classroom. Now, the second thing that I would probably do in a classroom is to establish a few classroom rules. They don't have to be very complex, but just a very few things. For example, sit, be quiet, do your work, take your turn, maybe a few things like that, that you can use to guide students back to appropriate behavior when they're off task or when they're not doing what you want them to be doing. Now, after that, I would begin to look at what some of the individual needs are. If there's an individual behavior problem or an area where a child is having some real specific problems. And then I would look at what I might need to develop to give that student information or to give him some steps on how to handle a situation or whatever it is that I think I might need to handle a behavior problem. The next thing I might do is look at some areas in the classroom where I can develop some choices. For example, during snack time, I might have some visual choices for snacks. Or in the play area, I might develop some choices for students in the play area. The thing is, though, that as you're thinking about developing visual supports in a classroom, you're going to start out with one thing. Do one thing, create one thing, and begin to use it. And then as you do that, look at what the next thing is. I tell teachers sometimes if they don't have any visual supports in their classroom, it's going to take them a year to set up a really good visually supported classroom. And don't let that be overwhelming. But what I mean is that you're going to do one thing at a time, one thing at a time, one more thing at a time. And then over time, you will develop what you need for your classroom to run efficiently. What happens sometimes is people will say, oh, I'll make a schedule, now I have visual strategies, and they don't move beyond that. And that's unfortunate because then those teachers are missing lots and lots of opportunities where they can use visuals to help their children be much, much more successful. An important part about developing an effective communication system and effective communication supports for children is to provide those supports throughout their lives. And that means that we want to be able to use supports in school and at home. But you know what? Sometimes there are problems with that because it's very hard lots of times for that communication between school and home to be really effective. As we work to develop effective communication supports for students, it's really important to have those communication supports available for students both at school and at home in all aspects of their lives. And yet that's not always really easy to accomplish. What happens at school isn't the same as what happens at home. And so it would be very nice to think that we're going to develop this system that is going to work all across the student's life in exactly the same way, but it doesn't necessarily happen like that. And the communication needs that the student has at school may be different than those at home. I think it's really important for parents and teachers to try to work together so that they understand the communication needs of that child and understand how visual strategies and visual supports can make a difference for him. But the exact visual tools that a teacher uses at school may not be quite the same things or may not quite meet the same needs as the child has at home. So what parents use at home and what teachers use at school may not look exactly the same, but what's really important is to work together and to find things that will make a difference for that child. At school, the first thing I say is to create a schedule for children to help them understand what's going on throughout the day. But that might not be the first tool that I would encourage a parent to start with because home life is not as regimented as school life is. So for a parent, I would recommend that they start with a few pictures of places that they go when they're leaving home. For example, we're going to Grandma's house, or we're going to the grocery store, or we're going to McDonald's, so that the parents are using those pictures to give children information about transition times, which is where they can have difficulty. So you see, the needs are going to be a little different in both locations, but the bottom line is the same, and that is that visual supports, making things visual to give students information, will be the goal in both locations.
We've used stop and go cards, and just to teach the concept of stop and go. So from a pile, the student would draw the card, would pick a card, and if it was the green circle that said go, they would get to continue doing their activity, playing bubbles or whatever it was they were doing. And then we would draw the next card, and if it was stop or go, that would determine whether or not you got to stop or go. We then put that on a ring to play with Mom at home for different activities, and we carried that over to the ring that Mom used when she was in the parking lot for when she would tell him he'd have to stop and then wait, and then it was time to go. Eventually, we went to just a wait on one side card, and then on the opposite side is the go card. So she would give it to him to tell him when he had to wait for her, and then turn it over, and he would read go and know that it was time for him to go.
I first knew about visual schedules through books and through people that try to help me, telling me that sometimes visual schedules help kids with autism almost every time with behavioral problems. So I just started taking pictures and arranging the schedule with the words right next to the pictures, and that worked. It worked. We use visual schedules because that is helping him, to complete his task, go from one activity to the other, and he really likes to know what's going to happen next. How is his day going to look like? So since we have visual schedules for his entire day, and also when he brushes his teeth and washes his hands. Everything is like in pictures, so he can understand what is coming next and how to finish the task. Before, when he didn't have that, he couldn't complete it. He will wash his hands but leave the water running. So with the schedule, he does everything the way he's supposed to. Before we started using the visuals, he will have high levels of anxiety, really nervous, really moving around all the time, getting upset if we did something that he didn't expect, really upset, throwing tantrums, really strong tantrums, and also with transitions. It will be really hard to, for example, I took him to the playground to just make him leave the playground was like a totally like a full tantrum. So after that we implemented the visual schedules, he could see that he was going to the playground, and after that he will leave the playground, and after that he will play PlayStation, or he will get to play with his toys. So knowing what's coming next, what it did is helped him lower those anxiety levels, I think, and his behavior, he's calmer, a lot calmer, and does a lot of social stories for Alex. Every time that I visit her, weekly, I will tell her, for example, we have this event coming, this is happening, this is going to happen, and she will help Alex write the social story, like the way you saw it. And then when I come home, I read it to him back again several times, just so he's prepared for whatever is coming. And that is helping him greatly, lowering his anxiety levels, and just help him go through, his daily routine without no meltdown.
We use a communication book that comes home from school to help Corinne tell me about her day, and for me to understand what she did that day, so we can talk about it. And it's just a binder with Velcro pictures in it, and it has each each part of their day, playtime and circle time and story time and all the different things. And then there's a picture of whatever she did, whether it's dolls, and there'll be and with whom. If she plays with Leah, or if she plays with the speech therapist, there'll be a picture of them. And then so we go through, and I start with at playtime I did, and then we'll point to the pictures, and she will say the babies and the Play-Doh or whatever it will be. And then we'll go next to, I think it's circle time, and then at circle time I did, and when they were doing the alphabet, it was the letter of the week, so I did a Z. And then my job was, do they have jobs every day? And my job was to do this. So we go through the book like that consistently, and then it has helped her tremendously, which now, like, we walk home from school a lot, and now she can tell me a lot of the activities she does without her book.
Thank you for watching today's Apples Video Magazine. We leave you with a poem, I See, I Understand, written and recited by Linda Hodgson.
When I hear, I forget, in one ear and out the next, but it makes more sense to me when there's something I can see. With my eyes, show me now, you'll be helping me learn how to make a choice or shake a hand. When I see, I understand. Whether I'm young or if I'm old, it helps to see what I am told. A written word, a picture card, can simplify what might be hard. A visual aid describes it best and gives the voice and ears a rest. From making friends to handling fear, showing me how makes it more clear. There's not much left to explain when a picture shows my brain who or where or what you mean on a clear computer screen. To recall what you heard, a picture paints 1,000 words. So much to learn, I think I can. When I see, I understand. My ears need a little hand. When I see, I understand.